I just thought of some vivid memory that I have, like walking up that berm, coming around that bend, seeing that tree that was. I imagined when I was there, actually doing it 20 years ago, that if you were going to meet the devil on a lonely road by yourself, that would be the spot where it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a film set, you know. It was so cool. It felt like a. And then I imagined when I was walking. This is all kind of just memory. Like, if I met the devil on that road, what would it be like? What would we talk about? Where would we go? Ultimately, I know that if I met the devil on the highway, he would get me to do whatever he wanted.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Because that's what he does.
But
He's the king of the liars. He's the king of deceit. I've been deceived a million times by people that are not nearly as smart as Satan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an intellectual chance against the devil. Nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
It's just whether or not he'd be willing to spend his time on me. I'd be honored if he would.
Okay.
Wouldn't you?
Maybe so.
If he's busy, man, that's like, you think, how hard is it to get a meeting with Jeff Bezos? Well, guess what? The devil could control him like a pawn on a chessboard. The most powerful, arguably, man in the world.
Let me ask you a different question.
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the devil.
Why not?
I think it's because I didn't grow up Christian, so it's not like a thing that is not. It's not a thing that's in my subconscious in the same way. I think people who grew up with kind of Christian values, like they have more of a vivid idea of what the devil is, and I think you in particular, like the devil is a recurring character in your stories.
I love the devil.
Can you talk a little bit about your personal relationship with the devil?
Okay, so when I was 13 years old, I was downstairs playing video games.
Mm.
And my parents called me, come upstairs. Like, come upstairs. Why? I'm busy. Come upstairs now. So I go upstairs, and my mom and dad are sitting at the kitchen table with this guy that I didn't know who he was. And they introduced me to him. His name was Pastor Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Pastor Steve Tecco. Tecco. Weird name. My parents were going to marriage counseling, and that had invited this asshole over to the house, who was their marriage counselor. And they were sitting at the table, and they said, we need to tell you something. So what is that? We need to tell you about heaven and hell. I said, okay. And then they started to tell me that if I didn't change my course in life and become a born-again Christian, then I would go to hell. And the proof they had for that was a drawing that this guy had made on a piece of paper and a pencil of a lion. Mm-hmm. An angry-looking lion. It was cartoonish, but when you're that age, and your parents are saying, like, listen to this person, mm-hmm. then even a cartoonish lion becomes scary. And he said, do you see this lion? He said it to me. I go, yeah. Mm-hmm. He goes, this is the devil, and he's looking for people who he can devour on earth. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm not sure what, in a kid way, I said, I'm not sure what you mean by devour. He said, like, eat your soul, and take you to hell. Mm-hmm. So hell is real, and if you don't want to go there, then you need to believe in Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I looked at my parents, and I was like, okay, and they're like nodding, like, listen to the man that's sitting at our kitchen table. And I go, well, all right, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to be eaten by a lion. And then he drew a prison bars over the lion, mm-hmm. and then said, if you believe that Jesus is your Savior, then this lion can't hurt you. He's essentially in jail. Now, do you want to believe in Jesus and go to heaven, or do you want to get eaten by a lion and go to hell? And I said, I'll believe in Jesus then. Mm-hmm. And so we bowed our heads, and we prayed that I would receive Jesus into my heart. And when I looked up at them, I said, is that all I have to do? That's it? And they're like, yeah, you don't have to worry about the devil anymore. And I kind of just sat there waiting for what would happen next. And they said that they were proud of me and that I could go back downstairs and play my video games. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I went back down there and I played my video games. And that was my first encounter with the devil. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't the last, because then it became an obsession to purge your life of anything that the devil was sponsoring.
Mm-hmm.
And come to find out, he was very busy with rock and roll music,
Mm-hmm.
R-rated movies, Playboy, the stuff that 13-year-olds are way too interested in for their own good. And now suddenly I found myself constantly at odds with what the devil wanted for me. Even though he was supposed to be in this cage, it seemed like he was always baiting me in with some sort of, what do you call it? My primal instinct
Mm-hmm.
was all Satan based. Because I liked the music. I liked seeing naked women. I liked hearing profanity. I liked watching people get killed on TV.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently all of that was contradictory to my life as a Christian. And this caged animal was the thing that was still somehow doing it, even though I knew he couldn't get me.
Okay, so even as you were growing up, like in your mind, the manifestation of the devil was still this cartoonish lion, or did it change into something else?
You know what? It changed when I saw this video called Hell's Bells, The Dangers of Rock and Roll.
Okay.
It was a VHS tape that my parents had gotten from the church library.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a documentary, and I wish I still had it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a documentary of this guy showing all of the satanic music from the 70s and 80s,
Mm-hmm.
the record album covers that had demons on it, the secret drawings inside the drawings of the demon. If you played the record backwards, you could hear the prayers of these musicians to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was saying all of this is satanic. And it's leading also to another one called, what was it? It was a video about homosexuals.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the 80s, you was still fine to, you used to watch 80s movies, and the gays they were haggled by Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
called all the things that you can't say now. And there was this conscious connection, like if you listen to rock and roll, not only you become a Satanist, but you'll be raped by men.
Mm-hmm.
And the connection was made. I still don't remember, but I remember the tape was called The Gay Agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the connection between how dangerous rock and roll was, being controlled by the devil, how it led to Satanism, which was really scary because it was the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and satanic movies were all the rage, horror films.
Mm-hmm.
And that could lead to being gay, which the video showed these, I don't know if they were pride parades of men dressed in leather
Mm-hmm.
with big fake dicks on them,
Mm-hmm.
with mustaches, like a Freddie Mercury on steroids. And they would like rape you. And I was just learning what sex was, so your butthole's sensitive at that age. I don't want some big man in my butthole. And if he's being controlled by the devil, and the music's being controlled by the devil, and all of Hollywood's controlled by the devil, this animal in a cage is pervasive, and everything in this world has to do with the devil. So it was the fight of imagine a 13 or 14-year-old trying to ward off all the hormonal changes that are naturally occurring feelings and thoughts, being convinced at that point that they're all Satan trying to tempt you. And then the world becomes extremely confusing because your only refuge is prayer. And when you're 14 years old, you don't really know how to pray, and you don't want to. You're busy with other shit. But that and reading the Bible, which are two things that are really boring, versus the whole world, which is controlled by the devil, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you become obsessed with the devil because you become obsessed with the idea that you constantly want to bow to his will. The only way that you can't is by doing boring shit, reading the Bible and praying and going to church, which is what your parents are telling you is the only way they approve of you as a person.
And in your mind, the devil is a person?
The devil
becomes
personified in a rock band, or becomes personified as this cloven hoofed beast that could come down and eat your soul. Or it becomes personified as anybody who's not in 100% agreement with the way you interpret Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually everybody, other than the people that I knew closely, were born-again Christians, were a branch of the tentacle of this enormous creature called the devil. Then that's a scary place. So it becomes overwhelming when you think about, could like Neo in the Matrix, could I get all the way back to the source of all of these pitfalls for a person? Could I meet the brain, the motherboard of this whole thing? They're very powerful and creative because they create millions of ways to fuck you up.
Mm-hmm.
Smart, you know?
And what would you say today your relationship is with the devil? Do you feel like it's something that exists, or do you think, like, emotionally, let's say?
No, I think because it was so real, it's the imaginary friend that eventually, isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the imaginary foe that is constantly trying to ruin you.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually when they go away and they become this abstract myth, but it's incredibly interesting to think that people never grew up and got past it. Mm-hmm. And they still believe there's an influence that gets them to do things, and they don't even realize they're doing them. A master manipulator. I love that. I love the idea of somebody being able to be subjected to a will they don't even know they're being subjected to, and that there is something out there that is so evil that it gets nothing but pleasure from ruining somebody's life. Pure evil. But has to disguise itself as everything that you ever wanted. That's amazing.